Bills Mafia, what's up, family? You know this team never stops working. Week after week, the Buffalo Bills are striving to get sharper, tougher, and more complete, all in pursuit of one thing: bringing that Lombardi Trophy home to Western New York. Before we dive into today's exclusive news, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single update as we ride through this wild 2025 season together. Now let's talk about what's happening behind the scenes, because while the trade deadline might have come and gone without a splashy move, the Bills did make some important adjustments that could shape the rest of this season. So here's the situation. After a relatively quiet trade deadline, the Bills front office wasted no time turning its attention to roster depth. On Wednesday morning, the team made several moves, the biggest of which was signing defensive tackle Phidarian Mathis to the active 53-man roster. This signing comes in direct response to the devastating injury to edge rusher Michael Holt, who tore his Achilles tendon in Sunday's win over the Kansas City Chiefs. Holt had become an integral part of Buffalo's defensive line rotation, bringing energy, versatility, and a veteran edge presence since returning from suspension earlier this season. Losing him hurts, no question about it. But now, it's next man up. Let's be real. Mathis isn't the flashiest name, but he's a guy this coaching staff knows well. The 27-year-old was already part of the Bills' practice squad and has been elevated a couple of times this year, including against the Patriots in Week 5 and again in last week's win over the Chiefs. In those games, Mathis logged 3 tackles while playing about 26% of the defensive snaps. Not huge numbers, but he's been steady when called upon. Here's the difference, though. Mathis isn't a direct replacement for Holt. He's more of a true defensive tackle, a guy who's going to plug the middle and help in short yardage situations. Holt, on the other hand, brought versatility, the ability to line up inside, outside, and even rush off the edge. That type of flexibility is hard to replace. In fact, through his 4-year career, Mathis has yet to record an NFL sack. That's not ideal when you're trying to fill the shoes of a guy who brought consistent pressure and motor on every down. But the Bills are betting on familiarity, reliability, and effort. 3 qualities Mathis brings every time he steps on the field. But that's not all. The Bills also shuffled their practice squad, releasing linebacker Jimmy Ciarlo while adding edge rusher Kingsley Jonathan and cornerback T. Corey Couch. Bills fans will remember Kingsley Jonathan. He's not new to Buffalo. He's played in 15 games across the 2022 to 2024 seasons, including a 13-game run in 2023 where he contributed as a rotational pass rusher and special teamer. The team knows what he can do, and he knows this system. Expect him to get some situational snaps, especially now that the defensive line is thinner after Holt's injury. As for T. Corey Couch, this kid is intriguing. An undrafted free agent out of Miami, Couch hasn't yet appeared in an NFL game, but scouts liked his quickness and ability to mirror receivers in space. He'll likely serve as depth for now, but don't be surprised if he gets some looks down the road, especially if injuries start piling up in the secondary. Let's pause here, because losing Michael Holt stings more than most realize. This is a guy who fought his way back into a significant role, brought leadership to the locker room, and was just starting to find his rhythm in the Bills' defensive front. He wasn't just a player, he was a tone setter. His ability to move across the line gave defensive coordinator Bobby Babbage the freedom to disguise pressures and keep offenses guessing. Without him, Buffalo's defensive scheme loses some of its unpredictability. The team will now rely more heavily on Greg Rousseau, Leonard Floyd, and A.J. Epenesa to maintain that edge intensity. And knowing McDermott's next man up philosophy, you bet every defensive lineman is going to be challenged to step up big time. Now let's talk offense, because while that victory over the Kansas City Chiefs felt incredible, it came with another concerning headline: James Cook's ankle injury. James Cook's status for this week's matchup against the Miami Dolphins is uncertain. According to The Athletic's Joe Buscaglia, head coach Sean McDermott told reporters that Cook has been sore for the past few days. That's not exactly reassuring, especially when we're talking about one of Buffalo's most dynamic playmakers. And Josh Allen knows it too. When asked about Cook's situation, Allen didn't hold back. He said, "I said this in training camp. There's no replacing James Cook. Hopefully he's doing everything he needs to do. He's a true pro, and hopefully we can have him back by game time." You can hear the respect and concern in Allen's voice. Cook isn't just a running back. He's a vital part of this offense's identity. His ability to catch out of the backfield, run between the tackles, and make defenders miss gives this team balance. Without him, the Bills' offense just doesn't have the same rhythm. The good news is that Buffalo has some depth behind him. Ray Davis and Ty Johnson have shown flashes this season, proving they can handle the load when called upon. As a tandem, they bring different styles. Davis with the power and patience, Johnson with the speed and agility. Given how Miami's defense have struggled lately, scoring just 6 points in their recent loss to the Ravens, this might be a game where Buffalo can afford to rest Cook if he's not 100%. The Bills have their eyes on the bigger picture. There's no point rushing back your RB1 if he's less than full strength, especially when the postseason picture is starting to take shape. It's about keeping everyone healthy and peaking at the right time. Let's not lose sight of the bigger narrative here, Bills Mafia. Despite the injuries, despite the lack of a trade deadline blockbuster, this team is still one of the most balanced rosters in the NFL. Every move, every roster tweak, it's all about maintaining momentum. The front office trusts this locker room. They trust the system, and most importantly, they trust the leadership of Josh Allen, who continues to elevate everyone around him. Buffalo's defense may have taken some hits, but the culture here is built on resilience. Every time adversity strikes, this group finds a way to bounce back stronger, and that's what makes them so dangerous heading into the second half of the season. So, Tuesday's NFL trade deadline came and went, and the Bills, they stood completely still. No new additions, no splashy trades, no reinforcements for a roster that's been absolutely hammered by injuries over the past few weeks. When the deadline passed at 4 p.m., fans were waiting for that one notification that Buffalo had pulled off something big, maybe a wide receiver to help Josh Allen or a pass rusher to fill the hole left by Michael Hoke's injury. But nothing happened. Crickets.
And then, just hours later, General Manager Brandon Beane took the podium to explain why. What followed? Well, let's just say it wasn't exactly the fiery, inspiring explanation Bills Mafia wanted to hear. When Beane met with reporters, he sounded familiar, maybe a little too familiar. Phrases like, "It takes two to tango," "It's not fantasy football," and "You can't force someone to trade." These were the main takeaways from nearly half an hour of talking. At one point, Beane even said, "It's not a store where you can just go in and say, 'Hey, I'll pay $20 and take this player.' It takes two to be able to do it." Now look, Bills fans understand the business side of football. Nobody expects trades to be easy. But hearing that explanation, especially when other contenders around the league were making things happen, left a lot of fans shaking their heads. The Indianapolis Colts traded for Sauce Gardner. The Dallas Cowboys landed Quinnen Williams. Even Jacksonville pulled the trigger on Jacoby Myers, a receiver Buffalo reportedly inquired about earlier in the week. So yes, while Beane insists the deadline is hard, plenty of other GMs around the league seem to find ways to get deals done. And here's the thing. This isn't exactly new territory for the Bills under Brandon Beane. Sure, he's made some deals over the years, but most of them have been smaller moves. Role players, depth guys, very few true difference makers. And that's what's starting to worry people. Because if there was ever a time to go all in, this might have been it. The AFC is wide open. Josh Allen is playing at a high level. The defense, despite injuries, has kept them in games. A single bold move could have been the difference between contending and dominating. Instead, Buffalo will move forward with what they've got. A 6-2 record, a beat-up roster, and a fan base that's feeling a mix of confidence and frustration. To his credit, Beane isn't backing down. When asked if the Bills' inactivity meant they weren't serious about chasing a Super Bowl this year, he doubled down. "I do believe we can win a championship with this roster," Beane said. And look, you have to admire that confidence. This is a team that's been to the AFC Championship game, that's gone toe-to-toe with the Chiefs, Ravens, and Bengals. Bean has built a winning foundation here, no question. But at the same time, the roster right now is banged up. 9 players on injured reserve, key starters missing practice. You can't ignore those realities, and that's exactly why fans expected reinforcements. Here's the reality. Injuries are piling up fast. Defensive linemen, safeties, even skill position guys, everyone's been feeling it. And while the team's depth has held strong so far, that kind of strain is hard to sustain down the stretch. When January rolls around and the playoffs start, depth matters. Experience matters. Health matters. That's what makes the lack of movement this week so frustrating for many fans. It feels like a missed opportunity to secure that extra edge before the postseason push. The NFL saw 8 trades go down before the deadline this year, tied for the second most since 1990. So yeah, Beans, it's hard to make trades line. It's not really resonating when nearly a third of the league found ways to make moves. Across social media, Bills Mafia made their voices heard. Fans weren't necessarily demanding a blockbuster trade, they just wanted to see something. A sign that the front office recognized how close this team is to breaking through and wanted to give them every possible advantage. Because right now it feels like Buffalo's message to the fan base is, we're good enough as is. And that's risky, especially when the competition, teams like the Chiefs, Ravens, and Jaguars, are actively trying to get better. Even one modest move would have bought some faith. Something that said, hey, we're going for it. Instead, Bean's decision to stand pat has left fans divided, some trusting his long-term vision, others frustrated that another opportunity might be slipping away. Bean's bottom line? We know what a championship roster looks like. In his closing remarks, Bean reminded reporters of his experience. We're 6-2. I've been to the Super Bowl a couple of times. I've seen AFC championship teams. You don't get there without a championship roster, and I know what that looks like. Fair enough. Bean's track record speaks for itself, but the reality is this. Those teams that make it deep into January, they're usually the ones willing to take some calculated risks. The Bills are walking a fine line here. Stay healthy, keep executing, and this roster can make a run. But 1 or 2 more injuries, or one playoff game where depth becomes an issue, and suddenly that quiet trade deadline might come back to haunt them. Now it's all about action on the field. Bean's words won't matter if the Bills keep winning. If they finish strong, lock up a high seed, and finally break through in the playoffs, nobody will care that they didn't make a deadline move. But if the team stumbles, if injuries catch up, if the offense hits a wall, or if the defense wears down, then all those cliché lines about "it takes 2 to tango" will sound like excuses, not explanations. Buffalo fans have been patient, loyal, and passionate for years. They believe in this team. They just want to see that same urgency reflected from the top. So, Bills Mafia, what do you think? Were you hoping for a bigger name at the deadline? Do you believe Fedarian Mathis and these new signings can help patch the holes left by Michael Hoke's injury? And what about James Cook? Should he rest this week against the Dolphins, or should he play if he's even close to ready? Drop your thoughts down below. I want to hear from you. And hey, before you go, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our Bills updates and inside stories. We're just getting started, and the road to the playoffs is about to get even more intense. Go Bills, always.